is Aili Acone-Chavez. I'm a journalism and visual media major. Today I'll be presenting on urban storytelling, integrating intersectionality and biblical principles. In my presentation, I will be discussing 4 main points. First, how my journey with intersectionality has helped me identify who I am on earth. 2, how biblical principles have helped me find my identity in Christ. 3, learning my calling by God to integrate intersectionality and biblical principles. And 4, what does it mean to be an urban storyteller and why do I want to do this? So, go on an imaginative journey with me for a second, okay? So you're in a room and there's one individual that's just a little bit off. They're just a little different, and maybe they smell funny. Maybe they haven't taken a shower in a few days. And you want to address this, but you're not exactly sure how to talk about it. You don't know how to bring it up to them. You don't want to be rude. You don't want to out them in front of a bunch of other people. But there's something definitely off. You would consider them what, maybe? Do you have any ideas of what you'd consider them? Yes, maybe an elephant in the room. So I've understood throughout my life that sometimes I'm the elephant in the room. Another journey. When I was in kindergarten, my best friend's name was Sarah, and we were both little 5-year-olds, and we were friends, and she had really fair skin and really blonde hair, and we were auditioning for a play. We were going to do Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs, and I was so excited because I really wanted to be Snow White because, I don't know, she's just a fun character and she's really interesting. And I remember working so hard and I didn't get the part, but Sarah got the part. And I was absolutely devastated. So my 5-year-old self was talking to Sarah and we were just discussing this travesty of our friendship, how she got Snow White and I didn't. And I remember something she said to me, and it'll stick out to me for the rest of my life. She said, "Snow White isn't brown." And I immediately knew that I was totally different. And I knew that she saw me as different. And that kind of began this struggle of identity, of understanding me and who I am. And I view myself as this individual, but then also other people don't see me as that sometimes. And it's based on outward appearances, and that's something I can't really help. So I came to understand this point of intersectionality. And what intersectionality is the interconnected nature of social categorizations such as race, culture, and gender as they apply to a given individual or group, regarded as overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage. So basically what this means is myself, I'm a woman, and I'm a person of color. Those are both marginalized groups of sex and race or gender. One aspect of my personhood, so coming from this understanding of intersectionality, what I've come to understand is one aspect of my personhood does not define the entirety of who I am. However, multiple things influence how I am and how I identify. So I was in chapel earlier this semester, and being a senior and having a lot on my mind, I was thinking about a bunch of different things, and the message was kind of like really in the back of my mind. But it was really good. He was making a lot of great points, and I identified with him in a lot of ways. And something he mentioned just like really caught my attention. He said, "I'm not confused, I'm integrated." And when he said those words, they really pierced me in a way. They like hit me like a ton of bricks. Because he perfectly described, and these are very simple words, but he described exactly how I was feeling in a really communicatable way. Something that I could bring to others and say the same. I'm not confused, I'm integrated. Because for my entire life, I've felt confused. The struggle of understanding my identity and how people view me, but then also, you know, like what does that mean in other regards in my life? That brings me to my second point. My journey with understanding my identity and finding out who I am in Christ. So bringing religion or God into the mix is kind of a big deal. You know, it's like there's these two worlds that are colliding. So I had, after my identity crisis, I kind of came to my identity in Christ crisis, and just understanding, what does that mean? Like, I'm a person of God, I believe, and what does that mean, like, that I'm different? So understanding this, I came to the realization that my true identity is in Christ, or at least that's what we read and that's what we study in the Bible. Our identity is in Christ. But I think that understanding who we are on this earth and how others perceive us also plays a role in understanding who we are in the kingdom. So while I found much of my earthly identity in being different, I really do find my true identity in Christ. But I think that even God calls me to be different. I think that is a specific calling he has on all of our lives, but my life in particular. So that brings me to my third point. I'm called by God in two different aspects. One, it's as a minority woman, yes, and two, it's as a Christ follower. So throughout my entire life, and maybe yours as well, I've been told that differences are different. They're kind of weird, you know, they set you apart from someone else. They set you apart maybe from majority culture. And they're always seen as bad. But something I've learned is that differences can be catalysts. Differences can be good. So I'm going to give you an example. This is Ash. I don't know if you guys have ever read the book Fantastic Mr. Fox by Roald Dahl, or if you've ever seen the film adaptation by Wes Anderson. You should really go check it out. But Ash is a character in the book, and by no means is he the main character. He's honestly the main character's son, who doesn't get a ton of screen time, but in my heart, he's always been the main character. And that's probably because I like an underdog, but also I really identify with a lot of what he's going through in the movie. And throughout the entire movie, they just say he's different. But they don't just say he's different. They do this weird little hand motion when they talk about him. They're like, he's different. Can you do that with me? That would be fun, right? Different, right? So every time I saw that, I was like, yeah, more power to you. You're different, you know? Like, I get that. And throughout the movie, they're saying these things about him, and they're showing that he isn't really typical. He isn't like everyone else. He has a tube sock on his head because he wants to fit in and be a bandit with everyone else, but no one wants to give him like a little bandit hat, so he makes one out of a tube sock, which is extremely adorable, and you need to watch the movie. But he's also weird. He talks too much sometimes, and he's like too explosive with some of his emotions, and he's really upfront and honest. And I feel like I can identify with that in some aspects. But in the end of the movie, and I don't want to give it away, so I'm going to keep it pretty open-ended in how I explain this, because I want you to experience it for yourself. His differences change the outcome of the story. His differences directly help everyone else around him. So that's why I think he's the main character, really, or at least he ought to be the main character. So as I've identified with Ash a little bit, that kind of brought me to the realization of how do I, apply this to my life? I don't know if you ever watch movies or read books and think how can I apply this to my life? Well, I do that. So in this movie, I apply Ash directly to my life because I identify with him a lot. But I was thinking about his character and also this crisis that I'm having of my identity, but then also my identity on earth, but then also my identity in Christ. And that brought me to two main points. That being different makes me similar to other people who are different. And two, being different allows me to be a bridge. So what I mean by being a bridge is I think that being different, but then also understanding that you're different, you can create this understanding between you and other people. So here I have to enlighten majority culture about what differences look like. And coming to these realizations have also helped me and impacted me in my spiritual journey. So I mentioned earlier that I think God calls me to be different. And that brings me to this passage in John 17, where God tells us, or when Christ tells us, to be in the world, but not of the world. So it's that idea that I was talking about a little bit earlier. You need one foot in heaven, but then one foot, on earth here. And so holding both aspects of my personhood in one hand, both who I am on this earth and then also who I am in God, I've come to this understanding that my heritage in the Lord precedes my heritage on earth. But understanding my earthly heritage can further my calling. And this brings me to my fourth point. What does it mean to be an urban storyteller? So I've talked about this, and this word or this phrase is kind of out there, like it's not exactly concrete. So when I say urban storyteller, maybe what are some of the things that come to your mind? Or when I just say the word urban, what are some of the things that come to mind? Street, okay. City. Okay, awesome. Those are some really great examples. So when I think of urban, let's just draw to some stereotypes really quickly, because that's kind of helpful. It's not always the best, but it's a little bit helpful. We have those stereotypes. So we think of maybe lower SES, so socioeconomic status, or maybe we think of POCs, people of color. Those are some things that come to mind when we think of urban. These are the people that I want to be an advocate for, partially because I feel this calling to marginalized voices and marginalized individuals, but then also because I identify with a lot of the same struggles that they have encountered. Some examples of this is Jesus with the Samaritan woman, or Jesus with the tax collectors. We hear these stories and we're like, yeah, that's really great. God is so cool, way to go. But there's another layer of that I have found a lot of connection to. When Jesus had his encounter with the Samaritan woman, he was directly going to a marginalized individual and was telling her that he understands, that he gets it, and that her difference is okay. When Jesus was befriending the tax collectors, he was going to this marginalized individual. And tax collectors, I don't know how to translate it better, because in our day and age, tax collectors maybe aren't as marginalized as people. It's kind of yeah, they have a job, they have to do it, I get it. But tax collectors then it wasn't good. But Jesus going to that tax collector and having that encounter with him, he was telling him that he's a valid individual as well. And these are some things that I want to base my life off of. So my calling to marginalized groups, to be an empathizer, also has led me to be a storyteller. And because I'm so passionate about individuals whose voices have been diminished or pressed down, I want to amplify what's already there, because everyone has a voice. Sometimes they can't speak it for themselves, and I want to be there to put a loudspeaker in front of them by being a bridge. So how does this, why do I want to do this? Why does this integrate? How does this integrate into what I want to do long term? Well, my profession, hopefully, is I would like to be a professor at a university level, and I would also like to be a magazine publisher and producer, because I feel like both are wrapped in everything we've been kind of talking about knowledge and empathy and storytelling. And with that, I want to amplify these marginalized voices and people groups. I'm passionate about hard topics and social issues because I found personal identity in understanding the benefits of being different. And I want to use my revelation to impact those around me. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation and giving me the gift of your support and your ear and interaction. This concludes my presentation for today. I'm now opening up the floor for any questions or comments.